Hi everyone, I'm Emmy, and my complex problem presentation is about the ways in which we can depolarize scientific discussions and findings on the internet, specifically on social media where misinformation can spread much more rapidly. So, in recent years, the overabundant information age of the internet has quite ironically proven to be a pervasive source of misinformation and ideological conflict over things that really needn't be debated. In general, politics has had a bigger and bigger influence on how people perceive scientific studies, especially here in America, and many times one's politics can negatively affect their perception of true facts. How can we convince people on social media that the true science they see is true? Well, I think it's less about convincing people and more about connecting with them. In order to address the issue of depolarizing science, we should first try to identify why it is that people can be quick to dismiss scientific findings. I believe there are two main reasons. For one, political alignments are often perceived even when they're not relevant. The most unfortunate thing about science on social media is how politically partisan it has become. Some people are quick to associate the greater institutions of science with one party or another, and this can lead to adverse effects, especially where the science of personal health is concerned. The second reason is that sometimes people simply don't know what to believe. Here, the source of doubt is more about confusion. When anyone and everyone can make a public announcement about any topic, information tends to conflict, and people tend to lose trust even in those who call themselves experts. There are several initiatives that have already addressed the idea of depolarizing science with their own outreach techniques. One study examines Dear Pandemic, a science news site and forum created in the wake of COVID-19. The website and its social media pages saw massive success, gaining over 200,000 members within a year. Dear Pandemic featured volunteer healthcare professionals from a handful of different professions who directly answered questions from their audience. The team of experts was made up of people on both sides of the aisle working together, though politics was not directly addressed. Not only did Dear Pandemic promote correct and useful information themselves, but they also taught their audience about the scientific process and why things seem to change so much, thereby giving them the tools to more critically examine scientific posts. The key to Dear Pandemic's success, though, in my opinion, is two-way communication. The ability for audience members to have direct conversations with professionals, real people, not chatbots, without having to pay a copay or schedule an appointment is the kind of freedom the internet was made for. Rather than being a news site that spews information at you, the study notes, Dear Pandemic forges trust with its audience by directly addressing their personal issues and questions. This next study examines the realm of environmental science on Twitter and Instagram. Part of the lack of scientific communication comes from the fact that many scientists just don't use Twitter, about 13% in 2014, and even less use Instagram. Furthermore, those who do use the internet to communicate tend to have biased audiences who already know the science. However, the scientists in this study specifically sought out non-scientific audiences. This study notes how different social media sites have different expected modes of presentation, like text for Twitter and images for Instagram. Any scientist using social media should also be aware of the site they use and the people that use it. A better understanding of their audience will serve to perfect their communication. After analyzing the strategies of different scientists, the authors deduced that the use of a camera and first-person pronouns in text personalizes the information and improves the perceived trustworthiness of the scientist. They found that it also helped to include personal stories and anecdotes, as it made the scientist more relatable. One important takeaway from this study is that audience retention and interaction were shown to be greater on Instagram than on Twitter. What can we draw from this? Well, Instagram differs from Twitter in that it's more informal, though more friendly, and also in that it has a greater focus on multimodal media, for which there are many benefits in terms of engagement. In general, social media can be an excellent tool of scientific dissemination, so long as the scientists have a good understanding of how their chosen platform works. So, as noted in these studies and others, there are a number of strategies for scientific communication that I believe should be implemented to reduce polarization and encourage respectful conversations between scientists and the general public on social media. There are 5 main aspects of positive communication that I have identified, which I will detail later on. These 5 points are two-way communication, bipartisan support, scientific understanding, personalization, and availability. First off, in both of the studies mentioned before, the primary benefit of using social media to convey scientific findings is the ability to communicate back and forth with the audience, without being limited by time or space. If scientists continue to use social media, which I think is inevitable, They must take advantage of this strategy. Two-way communication is the basis for trust building, and as I will discuss later, it also allows for the humanization of science experts. Secondly, depolarizing scientific information is not merely a matter of dissolving the politics completely. The vast majority of Americans identify with one political party or another, and this alignment does have more of an effect than many would like to admit. Scientists tend to completely avoid political labels when presenting information, and I think this makes sense, for the presentation itself at least. However, I do not believe that scientists should remove themselves from politics. Rather, as we have seen in the success of Dear Pandemic, I think it's more beneficial to blatantly include scientists from both parties. This would negate negative assumptions about party alignment and would help to erase the notion that certain concepts in science only serve one side. This will not convince everyone, of course, but I believe it's a good start. Next, we have scientific understanding. One of the reasons why people can be so skeptical of science information is because science is constantly evolving with our understanding of the world. This is not something that everyone knows about, so I think it should be a focus of science news. Audiences will get confused when they hear one fact that gets seemingly contradicted a few weeks or months later. Part of the initiative of depolarizing science must be to explain why different perspectives on a topic may emerge, and why that may not necessarily make previous claims invalid. As shown by the second study that we looked at, a personal connection to the science being presented that reflects aspects of everyday life makes the audience feel closer to the scientist. This, in turn, builds trust between the audience and the scientist, who, in this way, appears as just another person as opposed to an authority figure. A different study by Ruzi, Lee, and Smith found that people are much less likely to attach negative ratings to individuals as opposed to groups. So, using a video camera, and providing a personal narrative to accompany the science all contribute to a more positive perspective of new information. Last but not least, of course, one of the most important requirements of information on the internet is that it be accessible. This can be a bit harder to accomplish together with strategies like personalization because, of course, individuals can't be available 24 hours a day. This is where it's helpful to have bigger groups of experts, like in the study. That way, when someone poses a question, they don't have to wait as long for an answer. Perhaps the answer here is to build coalitions of individuals with expertise on a subject from both political parties, who answer when they can in agreement and consensus with each other. Now that we've gone through the core principles of the strategy, I've just got a few concluding sentiments. Regrettably, there is a strong correlation between political alignment with conservative or Republican ideologies and a lack of confidence in scientists. However, my strategy aims to stray away from alienating those of a certain political alignment, instead focusing on how to make science more trustworthy for everyone. If we attack the source of the misunderstandings, like lack of background knowledge and trust, we can build a sounder system of science news outreach. By connecting personally with audiences, being transparent about information, and by demonstrating that science is not a political alignment, I think we can build bridges that allow for more informed conversations about science with people from all walks of life. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching. Hopefully my perspectives made sense, and I hope that everyone comes away from this video with a renewed trust in science, no matter how often it seems to change.